We'll call the Construction Projects Committee meeting to order at 7:16. Present from the committee are Mr. Farrington, Alderman Dowd, Alderman McCarthy, and Alderman Lizigolia. Also present, Mrs. Oden and Alderman Shoneman. Architects report, Sunset Heights.
On Sunset Heights, everything's going fairly well. They're at a point now where tomorrow we're going to do a punch list on the F wing, the toilet areas, new toilet areas, the old admin, and the nurses area. Everything's moving fairly smoothly, basically on track, and they're going to be going to the next area in a couple of weeks, which is in back of the old administration area, some classrooms, etc. That's it.
Rebuttal.
Okay, just a little more. Yeah, we like Dan said, we're completing F-wing and half of the old admin area. They will punch list tomorrow. We're working on basically balancing and commissioning right now. The cleaners are in there yesterday and today, and the idea is that the school will move into that wing next week, and then the week between Christmas and New Year's we'll be in there doing demolition and asbestos abatement in the last phase. That phase will last 2 months till the end of February, and then we refinish the gym. And if all goes as planned, which it should, we will be done by end of March, early April. That's about it.
All right. Let's see, invoices. I would ask for a motion to approve payment in the following amounts. To Harvey Construction, $333,649.05. To John Turner Consulting, $1,130. And to Page Street Rentals, $95.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Farrington. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. There's on the agenda is a briefing on Elm Street. I think we're going to do that during joint specials. So, is there any other business for the committee? Mr. Smith.
Just, we received the paperwork from Liberty Utilities. We're receiving a rebate of $14,915 as soon as their financial stuff works through. And that is not the final rebate from them. They still have to come back at the conclusion of the project and look at the energy recovery and that sort of thing.
Okay, we don't need to do anything with that tonight, right? Anything else? Is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and we're adjourned at 7:20. 4 minutes, there's a new record.
Okay, I'd like to call the Joint Special School Building Committee to order. It's Thursday, December 15th, 2016. We're at the Nashua High School North Lecture Hall, and it is 7:20. If the clerk would read the prayer, and would Alderman, anyone you do it, or Alderman Shoneman do the pledge?
Sure.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the educational affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity, understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us, God.
Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman McCarthy.
Present.
Alderwoman Lizigolia.
Present.
Alderman Moriarty.
I'm here.
Alderman Shoneman.
Here.
Mr. Farrington.
Here.
Mr. Hallwell. Mr. Mosier. Ms. Oden.
Here.
Ms. Ziem. We have 7, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. I don't believe there's any reason for a non-public. Previous meeting minutes approval, Alderman McCarthy.
Move that the minutes of the Joint Special School Building Committee meeting held Thursday, November 17th, 2016 be accepted, placed on file, and that the reading be suspended.
Motion on the floor is to waive the reading of the minutes and place them on file. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Remarks by the chairman. Thank you all for coming out on this very cold evening, and hopefully we won't keep you too long. Remarks by school administration, Mr. Smith.
Just one thing I forgot to mention in construction, do we want to consider another meeting at Sunset Heights before the conclusion of that school? Just thinking February meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just make sure there's not a big event going on that night.
We'll walk around and tap on the soffit and see if it falls off.
It won't.
Okay. Construction Projects Committee report, Alderman McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to accept and place on file the meeting minutes of the Construction Projects Committee meeting held Thursday, November 17th, 2016.
So the motion on the floor is to accept and place on file the minutes of the Construction Committee meeting on Thursday, November 17th, 2016. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman McCarthy.
Move that the rules be so far suspended as to allow for an oral report held earlier this evening.
So the motion on the floor is to so far suspend the rules to allow for an oral report of the Construction Committee that was held earlier this evening. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman McCarthy.
The committee met earlier this evening and took no actions other than to recommend approval of the invoices, and with that, I would move to approve payment in the amounts of $333,649.05 to Harvey Construction, $1,130 to John Turner Consulting, and $95 to Page Street Rentals.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve the invoices as presented from the Construction Committee for Harvey Construction, $333,649.05. John Turner Consulting, $1,130. Page Street Rentals, $95, for a grand total of $334,874.05. Any discussion? Alderman Moriarty?
I have a question on the Harvey Construction itemized listing. I'll have to go from memory on the, I'm sure it's all, the math certainly adds up. On the first page that lists the hours charged by the various people, I noticed there's a laborer that has overtime charges, and what caught my eye is that the regular was like 30 hours and the overtime was like 2, and then there'd be a regular of 20 and overtime of 4. So it appears that that person's probably doing work on more than one job, hence they didn't charge 40 hours of regular and 2 hours of overtime. They charged 30 hours of regular and 2 hours of overtime. So if that assumption's true, I'm just curious how, as people work on multiple projects, how you choose
I don't think that's how it,
charge the overtime.
I don't think it's your assumption is correct. It's, the overtime is done on a daily basis at more than 8 hours. So if somebody worked 10 hours one day and 20 hours the rest of the week, they would in fact, or 22 hours, they would in fact have 32 hours, 2 of which was overtime.
Does that seem to be the case?
Yeah, that's correct. The labor that we use is union labor, and that indeed is the case.
Okay, thank you.
Not like we're used to.
So that's, okay, so their contract says that not only more than 40 per week, but more than 8 per day qualifies for overtime. Okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman McCarthy?
That concludes my report.
Okay. So we now have the architect briefing on Elm Street, so we're going to have to move. or get hit by the screen.
Passing the time here, I was wondering if I can add a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
So the pictures here reminded me of when we had that presentation a couple meetings ago about Mount Pleasant and the idea of bringing in a traffic circle. So the goal is to bring the traffic circle so that it pulls traffic off the street. But my hunch is that it won't actually eliminate traffic problems on the street, but what it will do is bring traffic up to the school. Right now, there's no traffic at the front door of the school. If you have if you add a circle, you're going to basically put cars at the front door of the school, which will just create a problem that we currently don't have. That's it.
Anyone want to answer that from the?
Yeah, I think we can look into it a little bit further, but I think the idea of having queuing distance off of the street helps alleviate some of the congestion, and we leave enough space between the door and where the loop is, the drop-off loop is, so that there's no impact necessarily to the entrance of the door. And I think there's, again, something we'll discuss a little bit further. I think the school administration, when we talk with them about it, we're actually in support of the idea of trying to move some of that, again, off of the road. But definitely it's something, it's a work in progress, and we can look at it a little bit further and test out some of those concerns.
So I guess it's a matter of opinion of whether it's a bad thing to have cars on the street versus having cars on the school grounds. My opinion is it's not a bad thing to have cars out on the street, but it is a bad thing to have cars basically in their front lawn. It will be a road, but right now the school is protected from the streets by a good 100 feet of grass. Whereas if you put this road, now suddenly you got cars everywhere, and to what end? So a couple people don't have to drive slowly down Manchester Street. I mean,
I think the intent is when the people are dropping off on the street and pulling in and out, it's slowing down the rest of the traffic on that street. The cars would only go in, drop off, and then leave again, and it's only in the morning and the afternoon. The rest of the time, there'd be no cars there.
right, that's what I mean. So the people, who's being inconvenienced, a couple cars going up and down Manchester Street for about 10 minutes a morning, is it really that bad? Versus the kids that,
Should probably be addressed by the local alderman.
yeah.
I hear you. We'll work all that stuff out. It's a good comment. I think there's concern about the neighborhood there.
All set? All right. Go ahead and present.
All right, thank you very much. Again, as it was alluded to, we were here a little more than a month ago delivering a presentation on Mount Pleasant School, and at that time we said we'd be back to preview some of our findings on the Elm Street Middle School. And my name is, again, Mark Lee. I'm an architect with Harriman, and with me is...
Dan Bisson from Harriman.
And so Dan and I have been through this school as well as our engineering staff, and what we're going to present are some of the highlights of our findings. The school was built in 3 phases. The original 1936 building, which everyone knows and loves, the more historic front of the site, and aspects of it from the Works Progress Administration, just a really beautiful building. Solidly built, masonry exterior, and 4 stories, ground level and 3 stories above. And then in 1961, a major addition, nearly doubling the size of the footprint of the building, but single-story addition. And then some small modifications in 1991 that added on library and improved some circulation and interior renovations as well. So the total current square footage of the building, gross square footage, is 198,000. And current enrollment is grades 6, 7, and 8 with just slightly over 1,000. So the gross square feet per student is just below 200,000 at 196. So fairly healthy for middle school. That's not bad. But again, this has 2 gymnasiums and an auditorium that help push that number up a little bit.
Just to intercede for a second, it used to be high school. When it was originally the first when it was first built, it was a high school, and then the first edition was still a high school. It got built in '61 because of the baby boomers, and while it was being built, the kids went on dual sessions.
Very good. That certainly, again, helps explain again why the square foot numbers are a little bit on the higher side that we would normally see. Dan, you want to just go through some of the architectural features?
Okay, ADA compliance with toilets. A lot of the toilet ADA requirements have changed over the years. So when they first built it, of course, there was no American Disabilities Act that required toilets to be accessible. Then when they did the addition in '61, they also upgraded some of them, but there are some areas where there's some dimensional criteria that need to be corrected. Some may actually need a little additional square footage by adjoining spaces. Several of the stairways, handrail heights, guardrails have changed, and that's been very common in a lot of the schools we worked on. You can see here the handrail is also the guardrail. Now they separate them, just two different heights. Roughly half of the interior renovations they did back in '61 went back into the original building in hardware sets. Classrooms in the original building had 2 doors, so they met the letter of the code by replacing one door but not the other. So we have a lot of knob sets involved in the school that should be upgraded to all a lever handle, and also a security nature. Often, sometimes use a Columbine hardware set, which provides a locking mechanism for teachers to lock down. A lot of the school maintenance issues like this is common. Baseboard peeling back, that's pretty rampant all the way through. There are pieces that just haven't been caught up to repair. Also, there are areas like this stair. This is the stair entrance from the bus entrance by the cafeteria. Chip treads are becoming a hazard that really should be taken care of. There are other exterior areas as well with stairs that have been chipped away or damaged that should be fixed. They're kind of a trip hazard. There's also spalling on the exterior concrete areas, which we have further pictures under the structural.
And I guess one note that there are a series of 8 modular classrooms on the site as well, and so there's occupancy outside of the main building, which again is something that potentially poses a security issue when you've got students having to leave the building to attend functions remotely. And I also just want to overview, right now this is a facilities assessment primarily in line with what we've been doing on a number of the other schools. So we've looked at the building systems and primarily looking at security and thinking about the main entrance and a secure entrance as part of the study. We're also about to embark on a program analysis, and that is looking at the suitability of the school for the educational program. And we talked a little bit about that at that last time we were presenting. And so that will also inform some of the study that we're doing as well. So what we're seeing tonight, though, is simply the facility side of it. On the structural components of the building, the 1936 building is actually pretty rugged building. It's pretty solid. The roof, we analyzed the roof framing at the auditorium and the gymnasium, the longer spans, and they don't meet current code, but they met the code certainly when they were put in place, and they're actually fairly robust. There are some limiting members that we can look at in terms of capacities, but then for the most part they're in good shape. Some minor deterioration of some of the planking that's used for the decking, but not unusual for the age of the building. We did suggest again that perhaps further analysis of the gym roof for overall structural capacity wouldn't necessarily be a bad item as well. We did observe some cracking and settling issues on the foundation, which also translated through to some of the window lintels and the precast sills. And so, again, that over the course of the 80 or so years, That's not necessarily uncommon, but it's something that needs to be looked at a little bit further just to make sure that there isn't a continued settling issue and that there aren't any openings in the envelope of the building. The masonry does require repointing, and so again, that's not uncommon for. I'm sure it's been done since the original masonry was laid, but it's something again required of normal maintenance on a masonry wall. The 1961 is a little different in terms of the structure. Again, the roof framing for the most part appears to meet current code requirements. And if we were to look at adding insulation, and this goes through all areas of the buildings, it would likely require us to look at the fact that it would retain more snow and increase the loads and may require some structural upgrades. It's something certainly we found in the other schools, Broad Street and Sunset Heights. Two areas of the building that, one in particular, the cafeteria, and I don't know, again, why it was such a desirable fad at the time, but it's actually sort of these Y-shaped concrete girders that span that, and so they're actually funneling water to the center of them. And yes, they do have drains and they collect that, but over the course of time, concrete has exposed without continued maintenance has about a 50-year lifespan, and that expired about 5 years ago. And so there's significant deterioration on some of the concrete. It's difficult to understand the capacity of those because we actually don't know where the reinforcing steel in those concrete members is. And so that would actually require an X-ray inspection. But you can see from the pictures that there's some significant spalling on the, you can see it on the concrete column in the lower picture. And you certainly see it in the blow-up where we actually have exposed steel on the structural concrete column. And again, there's significant issues with some of the concrete on the structure of the cafeteria. Not to the point where we're worried and that we feel like it's an imminent issue or danger, but something that definitely needs to be addressed as we're looking at upgrades to the school. There is some limitations in terms of the gymnasium structure and bracing that right now limits it to about a 15-inch snow height before the load starts to exceed comfortable limits on that. And I think that's something that is known, and the maintenance folks do indeed take care of that. So 1991 is actually, as we would expect, in a much better condition in terms of meeting current load capacities. And again, the only issue that we would look at is if we're increasing some insulation, that we would likely look at potential upgrades to that. They're relatively minor, the two areas that are three actually small additions that were made in 1991. Mechanical, well, the mechanical system is one of those infrastructure pieces that oftentimes you don't see, but this one's in some pretty tough shape. So the boiler, there are two boiler plants that serve it. One of them is a steam boiler plant, and that's in the 1936 edition, or building, and then there's a hot water in the 61 edition. The steam system, well, first, the boilers themselves are well past their rated life, and their efficiency is pretty poor. So the recommendation there is like we've been doing with the others, is to replace them with higher efficiency boilers. The idea also is to move away from steam, which is very inefficient and with a much higher maintenance requirement for steam heat throughout a building. And so the idea that we would recommend replacement of the steam distribution in the 1936 building. There are some rooftop air handling units that again are reaching the end of their useful life, and the recommendation is to go to a much higher efficiency energy recovery ventilator. Those are primarily serving two areas, the library and the admin area. And then the idea that we've been doing in the other schools is to replace inefficient unit ventilator heating and cooling units on the perimeter of the building with more centralized systems, easier to maintain, and also we can provide a much healthier indoor air quality in the classroom areas. Also, we've been switching from the older pneumatic controllers, control systems on the mechanical systems to the electronic digital controls. And again, the recommendation would be to move in that direction with this school. Plumbing is actually not bad shape in terms of the plumbing drains and supply lines. The big issue are just fixtures that are outdated, so they're not ADA compliant, and also they're not as efficient as newer fixtures would be. So there are a lot of the now lower flow on showers, toilets, and lavatories, and so again, the idea is that to look at upgrading those. There are two gas service entrances into the building. Not that that's a problem or anything, but just a significant note on the gas service. And in terms of the other plumbing components, the idea that again the eye wash stations in the science rooms should be ADA compliant as well. Also, in the summertime, when we shut down the heating plant, there's limited hot water availability, and in fact, in the 1961 edition, there's a 10-gallon electric hot water here that's I think piped right now to a custodial function, but for the rest of that portion of the building, there's no hot water available, and so newer systems we would look at sort of being able to have a different scalability to providing domestic hot water. Sprinkler system, again, is 25 years old, and it's actually in decent shape. Very little that we noted there. There's one area on the exterior that the roof that you're seeing right here on a loading dock doesn't have sprinkler coverage, and so that we would look to extend coverage into that area. And then beyond that, there's just a little bit of there's some recorded pressure, residual pressure at one time that was in the 50 to 55 psi range, and then the stated demand of the system is a little bit higher than that. I think it's actually 58 in the longest area. So, but the standing gauges actually indicate about a 70 pound. So I'm not sure why there was a little bit lower pressure range at one time, but just further testing to make sure that we've got enough pressure in the system. Electrical, for the most part, the issue is the lighting. That there's a lot of older fluorescent technology, still some T12 lamping. There are some newer LEDs in some areas, but again, this is one area that's pretty easy to switch to an LED and get a favorable payback on that type of upgrade. And that's both interior and exterior. Exterior's got some high pressure sodium lights that, again, recommendation is to switch to an LED. Also, with the LED, there's rebates available, which we've been getting some good paybacks from the Eversource. So we would do the same thing here. So we'd upgrade them to meet those standards to get the utility rebates. And in terms of the site, pretty constrained site for a school of this size. It's a very compact urban site. It's probably, if we were to actually look at the coverage, we're probably above 60% or so in terms of coverage of building and paving. And there's very limited parking. The parking that there is, you can see that there's some pull-off parking on Lake Street and a limited amount off of West Otterson. And Elm Street, it's parking right along the front of the school, and so that total accounts for about 80 spaces. And so, not sure how on earth the school has functioned with its population at 80 spaces. I'm sure there are people are finding places to park elsewhere, but and so the other challenge that poses is that there's sort of no primary front entrance to the building. So again, as we've talked with with you folks on the other projects, one of the issues of trying to define a secure entrance philosophy is having a primary entrance point to the school so that people aren't trying to find more convenient ways and circumventing the procedures, the security procedures that we put in place.
Also, the way students get to the site, buses come off Lake Street in between the modules and the building. There are about 18 buses. They queue up, they barely queue up about 15. There are 6 smaller buses that come off the loop off West Artisan Street. Students do come out on a variety of entrances around the entire building where parents will wait along the 3 streets around the building. So that's also a challenge, is how to help control that access to a secured point.
Again, there's 8 portables, 4 modular structures that are shown on the lower left-hand corner of the image, and they are really on the only open recreation space on the site. There is, again, there's the front lawn, but that's again against the street and not designed for use for recreation area. So one of the things we looked at, again, these are very preliminary, but the idea of conceptually how do we address some of the security issues and trying to define a main entrance. And so what we looked at also is the lack of parking on the site. And again, this is a very constrained site, so it's difficult to juggle all these things. We would, in best practices on a new school, certainly have more area to develop the site to a better condition. But what we're showing is if you were to put parking in the green space that's on the backside, calling the backside of the site, but the idea is almost to flip where the entrance is. We could achieve approximately 96 parking spaces there. The idea is to then define a main entrance on that side of the site, and that the other side of the building we would leave the way it is right now. If you were to come in off of Elm Street into that central staircase, you actually go up a flight in order to even get to the administration. So right now the administration is remote from that entrance, and again, what we're trying to do is create supervision and controlled access to the building for security. So in looking at that, what we did was look at what would an addition to accommodate the 8 classrooms on the 4 stories look like. And so you can see that is contiguous to the classroom bar that's in the center of the building. So that's the gray rectangle, sort of right dead center of the screen. And in thinking also about the concerns of the existing structure of the cafeteria, we can address that and create a new main entrance, and we'll give you sort of a thought of what we were looking at if we edited this, either remodeled or removed this portions of it would have to be removed to accommodate certainly the classroom addition. And what we would do again is recommend removal of the cafeteria and kitchen, which it doesn't function very well, as we learned from our tour, where the serving and kitchen area is actually it's one open space, and there's actually no strong separation between the cooking area and the serving area, which is a health and safety issue. And also looking at some of the classrooms that are shown on the left-hand side, whether that's a renovation or a removal and redo, and we would certainly work with contractor to better understand the economics of what seems to make sense there with proposed program. But the idea with this is thinking about how to make connectivity to all the areas of the building. So the yellow on this page indicates where the circulation routes are, and trying to create a secured entrance that connects to those areas, and relocated the admin area to that adjacent to the secured entrance, and a new kitchen, serving, and cafeteria. So this again looked at the possibility of what this might look like if we were to create an at-grade accessible, secure entrance on the site that would be proximal to a new visitor parking area and increase your parking capacity on site. And it's just a blow up of that right there. And so, again, one of the things that we're suggesting is with something like this, that it would create a new secure, accessible entrance and administration area, additional on-site parking, improve drop-off locations, address some of the structural deficiencies, and eliminate the portable classrooms. And so that kind of wraps up our summary of what our findings were. Again, as we stated, we'll be meeting with staff and faculty members, both from the district as well as the school itself, to understand how it currently is meeting educational needs, both as we understand them now and also projecting forward what we understand will be changing in the foreseeable future, and how to address those in this facility. And so we open it up to any questions at this time. Absolutely.
Alderman McCarthy.
Yeah, not so much a question as a suggestion. When you look at the programming in addition to the education programming in the school, one of the issues we've looked at numerous times is the auditorium and the fact that it has 2 toilets for 1,500 seats, basically. If there are any economies of scale we could get in terms of increasing the facilities available to the auditorium at the same time, maybe allowing, if we're going to put the main entrance to the facility in the back,
Right.
there may be an opportunity to use some of the interior spaces of the school as ante-room space for the auditorium and solve some of the, the other problem is it's got a lobby that's about half the size of this room. If you could think about those things, that, if we can get that bang out of the same dollar as the educational value, I think we'd really like to see that.
Those are excellent suggestions, and so we'll definitely look at that, either being able to locate toilets in on the large lobby area in displaced space or as part of the new construction. It's a great idea.
I mean, given that there's a corridor that runs down there, and given that we're adding half the parking that'll be on the site at that end, it may make more sense to use that same entrance to get to the auditorium. And then when you go in the front, it's hard to figure out how to use facilities that are elsewhere in the building, but if you're coming in the back and going by them, you'll know where they are.
Excellent point. And I think we'll make note of that, and definitely. Good.
The other thing is that when that was a high school, there was some big workshops that, to the best of my knowledge, have been vacant ever since, and every time we looked at doing something with them, it was a huge cost to renovate them. Are they still not being used for anything?
The workshops, like
Going to the gymnasium.
yes, we do have an active wood shop that's an ongoing program. There is a machine shop off to the right, at the far right-hand wing. A couple of those classrooms are what do you call tech ed type features, so they are being
All
used.
those rooms being now used?
Yeah, they're all being used in some manner. One is a STEM lab for science, one is a robotics room, one is a drafting room. There is still a wood shop in there. One of them has been used for the custodial shipping receiving in the corner. There's an overhead door, and they put supplies in there for the custodial and the maintenance crew, but they're all being occupied.
Any other questions? Mr. Barrington?
I wasn't quite clear on the traffic flow. You would still run the buses through in the same area as they do currently, and parents dropping off or picking up students would still go on what would become, I guess, the backside of the school?
We'll have to review that with the administrators, but right now, 30% of the students walk out of the building, and primarily in the front 3 entrances area on the sides, there's some stair towers. That's where primarily a lot of the students come out of the building, and parents pick up their students on Elm and sort of off the area of West Otterson and Lake Street towards the Elm Street area. Went there today again just to observe it. Civil engineers also observed it, so Again, I got the information from the principal, the percentage of students that do busing is 70%, which is quite a majority, which uses the lakeside entrance into that loop, and they queue up in that area. So that's what can kind of make sense, having the main entrance there, because most of the students are coming in from that area, which is a present lobby that's right next to the CAF. There's a fairly significant lobby that goes up into there, so it just made sense.
I think the principal said he has 18 buses.
Yes, he has 18 buses and 6 small buses that come off the loop off West Artisan Street for different other programs. And the remainder, again, is students just coming out of the building. There's traffic guards across Elm Street, so in 15, 20 minutes, the building empties out.
But if I could just follow up, but in the morning when students are arriving, would the expectation be that they would be dropped off on that side, but have to come around because of the one secure access point?
I guess there's a couple ways. In an ideal, if we had enough land, we would put the confluence of both parent and bus drop-off in the same location. I think the idea that there's a couple things that come to mind. One is that you could have the entrances unlocked in the morning at drop-off period, and then they get locked and secured. So any visitors coming to the site would certainly come to this main secured entrance. The other thing, as for the Lake Street side, the idea that we actually may be able to reconfigure this bar right here, so that the drop-off point here would actually try to make it convenient to actually come over to the main entrance on that side. So.
So that place you were just pointing to, there is a door there where people go into the auditorium. But that grass space right along Lake Street, just off the auditorium, if you could get rid of the grass space and move the cars, you could have drop-off right in that area. And it's not that far for them to walk around to that door.
Right, yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, that we actually could structure the parent drop-off on that side fairly well and have it still pretty close to the primary entrance.
I know we don't like to get rid of green space, but that's not green very often.
Right.
I think it's photoshopped.
Yeah. Mr. Farrington?
Just one more question. Is it possible to get a copy of the PowerPoint electronically?
Yes, I've already talked to Sean
Okay,
that
great.
Either tomorrow or Monday, we'll actually PDF it to Sean, that he can distribute it.
Excellent, thank you.
If you could send the copy to the members of the committee, please. And has this
We'll
been
go
given
through
to the Board of Education yet?
No.
Okay.
That's why I was asking.
Oh. All right. So, really strange, because I was there when they built that 61 edition. Spent a lot of time in that cafeteria. And it's
Is
kind
that
of
where detention was?
food fights. It's amazing that it had a 50-year lifespan and it's gone by it. That's a little disheartening.
And again, concrete, we've all seen concrete structures that have been rehabilitated, certainly at some point during that 50-year span. It didn't help that they inverted the sort of direction of the roof, sort of, but again, that was kind of a architectural fad, if you will, at the time. And so that's contributed to the acceleration of the deterioration of that roof structure.
I guess I would comment that the loss of that architecture on the back of the building is probably not a tremendous loss to the overall site. It was kind of an insult to the grandeur of the original building.
We'd certainly agree with that.
So if you built that structure that's in the white there, ignoring the gymnasium, would that try to somewhat be of an architecture that would blend in with the rest of the school?
Yeah, I think absolutely it could be done in a design that's far more harmonious and respectful of the 1936 architecture. So I think it really could look handsome on that side of the building.
And the new 4-story addition, is that to encompass the students that are now in the portables?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, comments by members of the public? Nope. Comments by committee members? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Oh, Mr. Smith, do you have anything else?
I do not.
And do you know when that, you plan to have that meeting at Sunset Heights?
The February will be, February.
February?
Trying to remember where the school vacation week falls in, if it would be on the third Thursday or the fourth Thursday.
We got 2 months.
One of those two.
Yeah?
We got 2 months to figure that out.
Good. Okay, we have a motion.
I move to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 8:04.